Could I invite people over and cook dinner for friends without alcohol? No, I couldn't do that. And then lo and behold, you do it and you're like, oh my gosh. And that, I mean, talk about a dopamine rush, like feeling that capability, feeling that like, oh my gosh, I can do something I never thought I could do before. And what else can I do? That kind of became a motivator for me in that, well, during the whole experiment year, and then definitely when I went full on.
Why does the world act like alcohol is the answer, even while it is creating problems of its own?
On the Alcohol Myth podcast, we pull back the curtain so you can see what's really going on with alcohol and what life could be like without it.
We are coaches trained in This Naked Mind and effective liminal psychology who fell for the alcohol myth for decades. Now we help people take back control of their lives by changing their relationship with alcohol from the inside out.
You don't need to wait for a rock bottom. You don't need more willpower. You just need a new way to understand what you are feeling and why you are reaching for that next drink.
So let's dig in. Welcome to the Alcohol Myth podcast. I'm Jonathan Ball.
And I'm Ellen Biggs.
And today we are talking about counting alcohol-free days, and we're talking about the concept of data points. So, Ellen, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know how many alcohol-free days you have?
Ooh, I could look it up. I have an app on my phone. I have 2+ years. I'm counting in years now, so that's exciting. But no, I don't know how many days I have. I did in the beginning, though. I did. It was important to me. But I will say though that it was nice to know how many consecutive days I had, but I also really liked to know how many like days in the month I had, how many days in the quarter I had.
Mm.
I never liked starting over at like zero and just scratching out everything that had happened beforehand. I like the idea of knowing where I am, knowing how many days I have, but it's not it all adds up to goodness. That really
Mhm.
worked for me, all being positive. I said a lot more than what you asked me. So how many days do you have, Jonathan?
I'm like you, I couldn't say.
Mm, mm,
I mean, well over a year at this point. I mean, that's about as close as I could get.
mm.
But I think that's a really interesting thing. Like the more time you get under your belt, I feel like for a lot of people, the days start to fall off. But I totally resonate with your observation that especially early on, when it feels like even 2 days is a huge win, then counting the days um, feels so important and can be so motivating. Um, when you first decided to go alcohol free, you know, how do you remember how many days you strung together before it started to get hard to tell?
Um, so I had a whole year of experimenting before I went alcohol free. So in that year, I had my very first time ever getting any days together. I had 23 days. I had signed up for a 21-day challenge. I did the 21-day challenge. Then I had 2 more days to get to the weekend. So I decided to just stick with it. And then on the Friday night, I was having some drinks. Um, and And then a few days later, I was after having drinks for a few days, I'm like, oh God, I felt really good when I was not drinking. So I want to do a little bit more of that. And then I think I went like 7 days and then I drank some more. And then I
Mm.
was like, oh, I want to see if I can get more than 23 days. And so, I played around with it, but it wasn't like I just stopped drinking and then I never drank again. That a year
Mm.
later, when I had my last drink, then I did a tactic called lengthening, which would be like I did 30 days because we were doing a 30-day challenge. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna do 45. Okay, I'm gonna do 90. Okay, I had this goal. I really wanted to get to 100 days. I got to 100 days. And then I was like, okay, if I can do 100 days, I want to try for 6 months. And then
Mm.
I did 6 months, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for a year. And then after a year, I think that's when I stopped counting. But up until that year, it was, I was paying, paying pretty close attention to it.
I love that. And like that gives you this like I'm not saying forever. I'm not saying this is, like I'm never again shall it cross my lips, right? I'm saying
Mm.
I'm going to challenge myself to reach this set point, this goal, and then I'm going to push myself to increase that goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And just little by little, because the thing that happened in that year when I finally stopped after my year of experimenting, I was the more days I got, the better I felt.
Hmm.
And then it was like, well, everybody keeps saying that it just keeps getting better. So then it started to be like, well, if I drink now, I'm gonna miss out on what might be happening. I might have to start over, and I don't want to have to start over. That seemed like too much work. So I just kept lengthening. But um yeah, and it became that cycle of I want to find out what's next, which I still feel that now at 2 years. I'm like, oh
Mm.
my gosh, like the transformation that I've seen in the 2 years since I quit drinking, I feel like I'm just a baby in it, really. Like there's so much more ahead of me. And it just and that is motivating to keep going. Once you kind of there's like a tip over point, I feel like. I'm curious when your tip over point was. It was like where it stopped efforting and it just started
Mhm.
being like, okay, yeah, I want to see what's next.
Yeah, I think that sense of a wonder and the joy of discovery as you string together more alcohol-free days is really exciting and really motivating.
Mm.
And I've been listening to and just learning on my own more about how dopamine impacts the brain and how and the role that dopamine plays in addiction and alcohol, as we know, or we're about to learn, alcohol releases an enormous amount of dopamine into our brains. And to offset that, because our body is always looking for balance, it's always looking for homeostasis, our brain starts turning off dopamine receptors because it's like, whoa, this is too much. So then what happens as you string together more alcohol-free days and you're not getting this artificial injection of dopamine all the time, your brain is like, as it's healing, it's turning back on dopamine receptors in your brain, and you literally experience joy in things that before were just kind of meh, right? Like because
Mm-hmm.
before the thing that was bringing you all your joy was in a bottle, and now like you're getting little hits of dopamine when you see a sunrise, and you get a little hits of dopamine when your dog does something silly, and it's just like these natural um little shots of dopamine kind of only get to happen once your brain is healed to the point where it's turned on those um, dopamine regulators again. And it's just, and the longer you are able to stay alcohol free, the more time your body has to heal and kind of adjust and come back into its new homeostasis. And that healing journey takes time, but it gets better and better and better and better the longer you're on it. And um, very much like you, I've just found these benefits and these little like life unlocks just keep happening. Like I keep thinking like, oh, I've probably plateaued, or oh, I've reached the end of the positive upsides. I'm probably back to, and then something else will happen. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like there's even more here to explore and enjoy. That totally didn't answer your question. Um, for me, I once I made the decision, I'm like very much for good or ill, like an all or nothing kind of person. And so when I made the decision to stop and I said, like, I'm not looking back, I really didn't count days. It was just like, that's something that was my reality. And now my reality going forward is going to be different. And I also have like a great accountability buddy in my lovely wife, and I I couldn't, even in my lowest of low, and like there was low, I couldn't imagine what it would mean to tell her like, "Hey, I'm not doing this anymore," and then to
Mhm.
go back on that would have just been like unthinkable. And so that was also really helpful for me too. Like it was like a I needed to make a commit because I hadn't yet learned how important it was to make the commitment for me. A stepping stone to that was making a commitment for her. And then in my healing from stacking more alcohol-free days and kind of coming back into connection with myself, I was then able to make that decision for myself, which I think is necessary for long-term success. So, and I also think that's my most recent kind of experience because before I had had like 2.5 years alcohol free, and for the first probably month or 2 or 3 months of my first time going alcohol free, I definitely counted days. And that was helpful and motivating. And I did much the same strategy as you. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm taking a month. Oh, wow. I wonder if I can get to 2 months. Oh, wow. I hit 90 days. And then from there, I was feeling so good that I kind of stopped counting. But that was a long and circuitous answer. But it's so interesting the role of like counting days and when it's motivating, and how supportive it can be, to keep on stacking that. But just like stacking it being such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, there's like three things in there that I want to pull apart and talk about more because there is so good. Like the when you were talking about your wife being your accountability partner, I mean, this just goes to show how many different ways there are to get where we want to go, right? Because for
Mhm.
me, I didn't tell my husband I was doing this because I was afraid of that. I was afraid of me changing my mind and him watching what I drank, and that would irritate me, and then I just didn't want any of that. I kept it pretty quiet. I mean, he obviously could see that I wasn't drinking that much. I think I did tell him one time we were going away for his this was early on because I stopped in October and his birthday's in October, and we went away for the weekend, and I did say I'm not going to drink on this weekend away because I've never done that before and I want to experience it. And so I'm glad I told him that because there were times on that trip where if I hadn't told him I might have um I might have gone back on that plan, and I really wanted to stick with that. But I did not tell I didn't tell him what I was that I had gone like 100 days until after I'd gone 100 days. Like
Mm.
I had to and it's interesting because I've heard this from a lot of different people. Some people love the accountability, some people shy away from it. And I think you have to really think about what is going to be the most helpful for you and also experiment. Like tell somebody and see if it helps you. Don't tell somebody and see if it helps you. Like, this whole thing is about an experiment, right? So um yeah, I wanted to touch on that. And then the other thing that you said that like you just keep feeling better, like with the dopamine, the receptors come back online and you just keep feeling better. The other thing that kept motivating me to go forward was the more things I did without alcohol, like that trip, for example, I did that trip without alcohol and I was like, and it kind of blew my mind. I was like, I did that. And it was okay. It was actually parts of it were great. And it was a little uncomfortable and awkward at parts, but I don't regret at all not drinking on that trip. My little brain got going like, what else do you want to try without alcohol? Like where, and so then it started to become like these little challenges. Like instead of me fearing an event, like, oh my God, how am I going to get through that without drinking? Which was my mindset a lot of times in that whole first year. Like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. Or sometimes I'd make an exception, like, I'm not drinking, but when I go to that party, I'm going to drink. And then
Hmm.
I started to be like, okay, but I did the trip. Like, could I do a party? And then I was
Mhm.
like a little internal challenge. Could I do a party without? Oh, and I did the party. And then it's like, could I invite people over and cook dinner for friends without alcohol? No, I couldn't do that. And then lo and behold, you do it and you're like, oh my gosh. And that, I mean, talk about a dopamine rush, like feeling that capability, feeling that like, oh my gosh, I can do something I never thought I could do before. And what else can I do? That kind of became a motivator for me in that, well, during the whole experiment year, and then definitely when I went full on.
That's so good. I'm jotting down a couple of things that I want to remember for some of the clients that I'm working with because everything that you're talking about are things that I'm excited to share with them. Um, I'm thinking about the times where you were first kind of experimenting. You said you did like about a year of kind of like experimenting with like stretches of time AF, and then those would be kind of punctuated with like drinking. When they were in your first year, when you were kind of experimenting with cutting back, when you would drink, were most of those intentional experiences? Like, I know that I'm going to go to this thing, I know that I'm going to let myself drink, or was it like a holy crap, all of a sudden I'm drinking kind of experience for you? I know it's been a while
I
now.
think, yeah, I think I, as I remember, I think it was very much like I would be doing some sort of a mini challenge with myself. Like, I'm going to go 5 days. I'm going to do the weekend. I'm going to do the week. I'm going to do, little things. And then I started, like, I did like a month and then it was my anniversary. Our anniversary is on May 1st. And so I decided I was going to drink on our anniversary. Um, and so a lot of it was quite planned, but
Mhm.
then once I started drinking, it wasn't like I planned, okay, I'm going to drink for 3 days and then I'm going to stop. I would
Mhm.
start drinking and I would sometimes quite often the first night that I would drink, it would be like, oh, see, this isn't so bad. Like, I
Mhm.
slept okay. I didn't totally overdo it. I just had a couple glasses of wine. But then by the second or the third night that I would drink, it would be the whole bottle. I'd be sleeping terrible, So very quickly, and this was a pattern that started to emerge, that it was like, okay, I if I'm choosing to drink, I'm choosing to be pretty shattered. Like that, and that sort of became the equation for me. It was like, okay, I cannot drink and feel really good, but I don't get to drink, or I can drink and feel really shattered.
Mhm.
And it started to be like, I didn't like feeling shattered all the time. And then the mindset shifting, like, but is it that I don't get to drink when I'm not drinking, or is it that I get to not drink?
Mhm.
And that kind of mindset was starting to shift. But I would say a lot of my first drinking moments when I was experimenting was planned, but then what happened after tended to go off the rails.
Oh my gosh, so relatable. I'm thinking about that. It sounds exactly like me in my moderation spirals where
Hmm.
I mean, for years I did this where I'm like, I know that I'm not happy with how much I'm drinking, so I'm just going to insert some arbitrary limit, whether it's like the kind of drink, the number of drinks, or the time, right? And I experimented with
Hmm.
all of them.
Hmm.
But then, like I'd have success with that to a point, and then the next day I'd be like, well, that worked okay. So it's not so bad. So all of a sudden I'm, 10 IPAs deep, right? Like it was always such this slope where it'd be like, oh, things are fine, and it'd fall off, right?
Hmm. Hmm. And
And
once
that's
you
the
have the 10
pain.
IPAs, then you're in this, then you have to have two or three or four just to feel better the next day. And then,
Yeah.
then you're back in the same old cycle.
Well,
Sorry,
it's
what were you going to say?
miserable to be in that situation and to be like, it just reminds me of the essential pain of moderation, where you're saying this thing that I want, I'm not going to let myself have.
Hmm.
you're setting up so much internal conflict with yourself just at the outset, if you still value the thing that you're not letting yourself have. But
Mhm.
the I mean the real unlock and I think real freedom comes from seeing the thing for what it really is. And the I think Annie writes about this in This Naked Mind. In the absence of desire, there is no suffering. If you're not wanting to consume alcohol because you see it for the, you know, harmful substance that it is, then you're not like, oh man, I want to, pour that glass of poison down my throat, right? Like, and if you can get to that point, that's a great place to be because it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think for me, all that experimenting, I needed all of that to get to that place because
Hmm.
it helped me see that instead of it being alcohol was the thing that I wanted that I just couldn't have, it was it became I started to see the pattern that every time I would let myself have it, every time I would drink, every time then I would be canceling plans because I would be hungover. I would be not if I was, I started to go to the gym more that year. I get a
Hmm.
little healthier, eat a little healthier. Then I'm canceling my exercise class in the morning, or I'm, you know, ordering fries instead of the salad. I'm doing all this, and you can. It's become such a stark comparison when you have the time that you're alcohol free versus the time that you're drinking. And so I started to see instead of alcohol being the thing that I wanted that I had to give up, it was like I realized I had to give up alcohol to get the thing that I wanted, which
Hmm.
was, that feel good, my health, my energy, my confidence, my sturdiness, my feeling capable and like conquering the world. If I could do a 50th birthday party alcohol free, I thought I could do anything. I mean, that was
Hmm.
super motivating for me. And so it started to become the opposite of like I was giving something up, but like, oh, if just giving up this one thing, I get to have everything.
Hmm. Yeah. And when you're like in this toxic relationship with alcohol, it becomes the one thing that you have, right? And so you have to like set that
Mm,
aside in order to make room in your life for everything else. Huge, huge.
yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that comes up sometimes when we're talking about stringing together AF days and counting progress in this journey is the concept of data points. And so a data point is where you are intending to string together AF days, and in spite of your best efforts, you end up drinking. And this Naked Minds methodology, it's what Alan and I are both trained in. We don't see that as a failure of your alcohol-free journey. Instead, we look at that experience as a data point, as in something, an experience that will give you useful, actionable information to take with you on the journey forward. So, Ellen, what's your experience with data points and how do you kind of conceptualize them?
Yeah, for me, data points were a huge part of my journey, and they got me to where I am now. So I think, I mean, everybody's different. Some people just stop and they don't have any. Well, what you would have is alcohol-free data points, right? So I think we tend to think of data points as when we drink, but equally as important, the data that we get when we don't drink, that's also data. But I think what you're talking about here is the data point of when we have a drink. And I'm reminded of something that a dear friend of mine that I met along this journey said at one point about alcohol. He said, alcohol is a patient teacher. And
Mm.
she will be there time and time again to teach you the lessons that you need to learn about her until you've mastered it, right? And so I tended to think of all of my data points as being like, it was like me being like, okay, what if alcohol teacher. What if I just have two? How's that? Let's bring it to the front of the class and see how it goes. And so I would experiment. Okay, I just have two. Yeah. And then within a week, I'm drinking a bottle. What if I only drink on the weekends? What if I only drink on special occasions? What if I only drink on holidays? And I would come up with all of these things and I would, bring it to bring it to the teacher and be like, how about this? How's this gonna work? And she just, I just kept getting the same answer, in a different way, but it was a different way that I needed to hear in order for me to, and it wasn't just like the other, I needed to hear, I needed to learn, you know, try out going on vacation without alcohol and see. Try out going on vacation with alcohol mindfully, recognizing what you're doing and see. Compare the two. You get to make your choice. I mean, that's what I'm such a proponent of because I think I can tell you that it's better to have a holiday alcohol free. You can say it, but until the person that's in it experiences it, I don't think we believe it. I didn't believe it. I had to find out for myself. And so that's what these data points are there for, both the alcohol free ones and the drinking ones. It's like, oh, okay, you thought it was going to make the celebration better. Did it? Like, like objectively, was it better? And what were the consequences? And how do you feel the next day? And do you regret drinking? When you don't drink, do you regret not drinking? Like all of this is data that we then get to take forward and make our next decision. And I think
Mhm.
that's how we figure out our own individual way forward.
Mhm. It reminds me of the phrase like you have to go there to know there, right? Like
Mm,
we can share with we can share profound truth, but oftentimes it doesn't matter until you've lived it. And what a great and humbling thing to know, right? I
mm,
also thinking about data points in the context of like what counts. And I really loved your expanding of my understanding of data points as like a data point gets to be some experience that we have that we learn from. And a conversation was happening in the community recently where somebody was asking if if while they were doing a 30-day alcohol-free challenge, they had a THC drink, so something with active substance in it, did that reset their days, you know?
mm,
And the response is like, well, what did you learn from it? Right? If that's,
mm.
and when it comes to the idea of like resetting days or not resetting days, to me, that's another one of those instances where it's a super personal decision. What is going to be motivating to you? What is going to move you towards your goal? Do you, is it motivating? Is it, empowering to uh, keep the days and know like, that you've learned something from it? Or is it motivating to, um, I don't know, reset your days and have another thing to strive for? And there's, I know that there's one right answer for me in that conversation, but I think the right answer is likely highly individual.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm thinking of all the different ways that I've heard people do it, and
Mm,
uh, I used many of these, and I'll share some of them just to so people can see how many different options there are. Like, I know a woman who would say, "I've been alcohol free for the past 6 months with 4 data points." So
mm.
6 months of alcohol freedom, but she drank 4 different times. And that doesn't take away from 6 months of basically not drinking, right?
It really
So
doesn't.
and each one of those data points she learned something from and then she moved on, like that. But if she had to reset down to zero every time, how demotivating would that be for me anyway, personally? Another way to do it, I use the Try Dry app, I think it was, and they all keep updating, so it might be a little bit different now. But what if you didn't drink, you got a the square on the calendar was yellow. And then, so as I populated the month, the more yellow I had, the more alcohol-free time I had. And the days that I drank populated black. So you could see on my little phone, the more yellow, the more alcohol-free time. And then I could scroll my months. So like January, how much was yellow? February, how much was yellow? March, how much was yellow? And I could see trends. I'm like, oh, am I going in the right direction here? Am I going, do I need to be like mindful here? That was helpful for me. I know a lot of people do percentages. Like I was 10% alcohol free. I was 90% alcohol free. If I was 10% alcohol free last month, this month I want to be 15% alcohol free. We can use these things to our advantage, whatever
Mhm.
feels right for us, and not get boxed in by anybody else's idea of the way that it has to be done.
Yeah, the right way to do it is the way that moves you towards your goal.
Hmm.
There's not some kind of like holy scripture that says like this is the official way to count days. It's so much
Yeah,
about how you feel.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like little color calendars you can get that you color in, when you have an alcohol-free day, and the more color on your I mean, you can go crazy with this. Like use your creativity, use your whatever
I used
makes
to
you feel
track
good.
mine. I used to track mine in my bullet journal. So if I was like in my one of my moderation phases, and I was like tracking how many days it had been, um, every day I would just add a number in my bullet journal. And so this is day one, this is day two, this is day three, this is day four. Um,
Hmm.
I think I rarely in those days made it past 10. Yeah. Well, Ellen, we like to make sure that that the alcohol myth is super practical for people. And so what actionable advice would you have for anyone who made it to this point in the episode and they're thinking about counting AF days, the role of data points, and how to put that into practice?
I would think about what feels motivating for you as a way to track, and I would experiment. So if something visual speaks to you, get a calendar and start filling in colors. If counting the number of days, there are so many apps out there where you can track. I have one that I love. It's called I'm Done Drinking, and it tracks how much money I've saved. So I put in that one I do. That's the one that I know how many days, because it'll tell me how much money I've saved, in addition to how many calories I've saved, in addition to how many days I have. And you look at it and you're like, whoa, I mean, I've saved, well, I could look at it, but like 20 grand, I think, honestly, that $20,000 in the 2.5 years. Because you put in how much you would on an average spend, and I would probably spend somewhere between $10 and $12 on a bottle of wine nightly, plus more on the weekends. I mean, you go out to eat and you're spending $50, $100 sometimes on booze, right? I mean, this stuff adds up. So, finding a way to track that feels motivating, does not feel punitive, that feels encouraging, that feels hopeful. That's what I would suggest. What about you? What comes to mind?
Oh, it's so gorgeous. I need to stop asking you the question because you always have such good answers. And then I'm like, yeah, that. I think
Well, I don't
that
stop with just one. I'm just like, let me talk for 10 minutes to answer your question. Sorry about that.
no. I think that I would just encourage people if you're in the early days and you're starting to stack alcohol-free days, I promise you it gets better. I promise you it gets easier. Your brain and your body are healing themselves. And the longer that you give it to return to balance and to turn back on those dopamine receptors that have been turned off by however long you've been drinking, you're going to have you're going to have benefits that you wouldn't even believe right now if I told you about them. So the the more days that you can string together, the better. And I really loved your strategy, Ellen, of lengthening. So if you've got a target in mind, go all in, make the capital D firm decision to go for that goal. And then when you reach it, as you're celebrating, as you're feeling good, then see if you can lengthen that goal, because you're going to be in a really special state of being able to leverage that positive feeling into pushing your life forward into your next I don't know, your next journey, your next horizon, your next goal. Um, People only do things that they feel like doing. So if you're feeling good because you've just hit a goal, go ahead and make another capital D decision that's going to move you towards where you're headed. And don't worry about forever. Worry about the next goal that you can set for yourself. That's gonna move you towards the life that you want.
Yeah, and lean into curiosity while you do it, right? Like, how will I feel if I go another 5 days? Like, that
Mhm.
brought me forward a lot. How will I feel if I get through the weekend? How will I feel if I actually don't drink on my husband's birthday? We get to, we get to experiment, we get to try, we get to learn new things.
Mhm. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Myth Podcast.
If this episode sparked something for you, we'd love to hear about it.
Send your questions, stories, or ideas for future episodes to thealcoholmyth@gmail.com.
We read every message. We really do.
Take good care of yourself. We'll see you next time.